Well, our first guest for season 2025 played 85 games for the Saints, of which 10 of them were finals during a halcyon period for the club. Drafted pick 8 in 2003 to join his brother Xavier, who was drafted a couple of years earlier at pick 3. I speak of RAPH CLARKE. RAPH, thanks for jumping on and joining us.
No worries, fellas. Thanks for picking me. It was quite a surprise to get asked to have a chat. Thanks very much.
In terms of but before you were drafted, obviously with your brother at the club for a couple of years, you would have been following him reasonably closely. Taking it back to that, did you always have an inkling that, based on your talent and first-round prospects, that you might have ended up at the Saints?
I didn't intend to end up at the Saints. But I was fortunate enough. I was a St Kilda supporter as a kid. So when Xavier first went there, I was over the moon, and I was quite lucky that, having that couple of years behind him, I sort of made the same representative sides and involved in the same sort of academy as he was. So it sort of gave me an indication that I was in that, in that same sort of area to be picked up, which gave me the hope. So, yeah, and then the same All-Australian teams were both lucky to play in as well. So that gave us, really good idea, because Xavier, like I said, he got picked. So I always sort of had an understanding that I'd be pretty close to getting the spot somewhere.
Raf, having watched X go through that process a couple of years earlier, what was it like for you? I mean, did you speak to the club? Did you speak to Grant or to JB or whoever? And what was that process like of, I guess, arriving at St Kilda?
Like I said, I was very lucky because through the under-17 All-Australian side, we got to train with a club of your choice for a week. And, obviously being a St Kilda supporter, I was always going to go there as my choice, but then they obviously have Xavier there as well. And then, we were quite lucky that Xavier was there, and we went down for his first game. And, and on the holidays, we were down there and watched, we'd seen him train. So we always had that sort of connection with St Kilda, which made me very lucky. Johnny Beveridge always said g'day and always said, no, we're keeping an eye on you, and I would like you to, if we get the chance, would love to have you here as well. So that sort of gave me an indication that, it was always going to be a chance, and definitely a chance for St Kilda.
Yeah, so having Xavier there would obviously make the transition into the club a lot easier, having your brother there. But who was the other sort of, I guess, players that, when you first arrived, took you under their wing and gave you some leadership, I guess, or gave you a bit more of a idea of how things worked and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I was definitely quite lucky. Like I said, getting to train down there the year before, and meeting guys like Justin Kaczynski and those other boys that Xavier was living with at the time, Joshua Houlihan and Matty Murray. But also Brendan Goddard was my group age, but he was early in the year, so that's why he went the year before me. And so Brendan Goddard, having him there, but when I got there, was also an easy one, because we played in about 2 or 3 All-Australian squads together in the 17s and whatnot. And but there definitely was a young group when I got there. And from day one, when Xavier, for his first day at training, he always made phone calls with other players and chucked them on the phone to me. So I sort of had a relationship with a few of the guys before I even got there, and a couple of them came up to, like those names I mentioned, came up to the Darwin at the end of their footy seasons to do some fishing and whatnot. So I got to meet a lot of the players prior to getting there. So it almost was like rocking up to a football club where I'd already sort of had a game or two realistically when I did get there. So it made it a lot more easier than going to a club where I didn't know anyone. So I was very lucky, like I keep saying.
You obviously would have known a lot about the club, and as you say, you knew a bit about some of your teammates, and you'd been in touch with them. But in terms of adjusting to living in Melbourne, how big a challenge was that? Obviously, as you said, you had a mentor in your brother a couple of years earlier who had done it, and even Goddard, as you say. But what was that experience like, adjusting from life in the NT to life in Melbourne?
Yeah, I guess just the winter's obviously the toughest, but the other positive that I got to move with Xavier and those couple of boys' names I mentioned, Joshua Hall and Matt Murray, so it made it a lot more easier instead of moving in with a host family like Xavier did when he went down there. So yeah, I was straight away in amongst with the boys, and but yeah, it was obviously hard because I never left home. Obviously, went right through to school year 12, and then a month later, I'm moving to Melbourne. So yeah, just to getting used to the traffic and the all the other smaller things, and then when the winter kicked in, it definitely was tough. Yeah, adjusting to those, but yeah, it all came pretty quick. And yeah, if you're not ready for it, then I wouldn't last that long down there, I guess. So.
Before we get stuck into your career, I mean, what was it like growing up in the NT, and I guess what did footy mean to you as a kid?
It was always number one sport for us because Dad played he was a footy player up here, and with our beloved club, St Mary's Football Club up here, and ever since I remember, I'd always had a football and always run around chasing Xavier and like Andrew, the older brother than Xavier, and on all that. So I just followed them, and we definitely always had a football in our hands. And when we look back through photos of us as kids, there's always a footy in all of our family photos with one of us holding it. And yeah, it was sort of like we had no choice really, but not saying Dad forced it on us, but
You can say that.
Yeah. But yeah, I was as you know, we lived out on a rural property as well, so we had 40 acres, and so we had plenty of space to run around and kick a football always. So yeah, it sort of kept us off the video games and anything like that. So yeah, very, very handy. And yeah, being up in Darwin, the only thing, and I just still think it's a bit of an issue for kids to readjust now, because when they play the under 12s and all those grades up here, they're still playing across the oval or half an oval. And then when I first went down for the NT schoolboys as a 11-year-old, that was the first time I played on a full-size oval, and there was, when you're playing NT versus bloody Queensland or Victoria, and you had to adjust pretty quickly to a full-size oval when you hadn't done it before. So that was probably the only major challenge I found as a young fella. But back then, all you want to do is kick the football, so it didn't really hit you as hard, I guess. So,
yeah, so speaking of just getting out there and kicking into football, when you first start, you're out there playing for Springvale, I guess in the real cold Melbourne winters out in the suburbs and that. And how did you go in those initial games playing in the VFL at that point, and I guess trying to push your way into getting into the senior side at some stage? What was the communication between you and I guess the coaches and that, and how you were tracking and what you needed to do while you're down there?
Yeah, I think the hardest one when I first got down there, because I was lucky up here in the Territory, you get to play, like you're playing senior football when you're good enough. Could be playing for senior footy at 15. So that helped me adjust to the, playing against the bigger bodies a lot quicker than expected. If I hadn't played any senior footy and moved down there, it would have been another challenge in itself. But yeah, I was drafted as a forward, and when my last couple of senior seasons up here, I played across the half back line, and then after that first season, playing in the VFL and whatnot, I realised that I should, let Grant Thomas know that I'd really like to put my hand up to go to the half back line, where I finished a lot of my senior footy in Darwin doing, and that probably helped me adjust quicker and learning how to read the play, which is one of my things that people always told me I did really well. So yeah, I think I wish if I could rewind the clock back, maybe if I told them from the get-go to play me down back, I might have broken into my first senior game in the first couple of rounds, or a bit earlier.
Debuted in a good win over Essendon late in the season. Gary kicked 8 and Rewald 7 in that same game. Then 2005, you played, I think it was 16 games, including a couple of finals, Rising Star nominee early in that year. You had 20 possessions and kicked a goal against Melbourne in your second game that season. So I guess what did you learn that sort of set you up for what was a pretty good year? Obviously, you played in a preliminary final in 05.
Yeah, definitely. And I think just making sure I could get through the whole pre-season and doing the off-season work to come back ready to go. Yeah, when I got drafted and the rest of the club's already done maybe a month of training, and then to try and catch up to everyone. So I think just that having that 12 months under to learn the conditions and the training and what's expected of you was the biggest learning curve in that first year. And then to go home and not bloody, just think it's the holidays, when everyone thinks when you're on holidays you get to lay around and have fun and go to wherever you like, but after 2 weeks you're already back into a training schedule and watching what you eat and all that. So, that's the best thing I learned after my first season, and that's probably what helped the most. And I wish I'd done more of the leg strengthening and Pilates stuff from the get go as well, because after that second season is when all the bloody hamstrings decided to start giving me some grief, and also I had a bit of the osteitis pubis as well. So had that operated on after the second season as well.
You mentioned that you were a St Kilda supporter. You would have seen obviously some of the real dark days of the footy club as a fan. Did you know, I guess, in that 04-05 period that this team had the capacity to be something special? I mean, obviously we know that ultimately didn't get the ultimate prize, but that team really had the capacity to be something special. Did you know that at the time, or is it something that you kind of look back and go, shit, I wish I could have done something different, or how do you look back on that now?
Oh no, I think I knew because all the draft picks and the names that you could probably mention, and Revolt Kaczynski and all those early picks, and then even Xavier's draft year, the super draft they called it, and Del Sando and Montagna and even Maguire and those types. We definitely knew we had a good little squad getting put together there, and but when I got there, that's why I was so glad. I was like, could see what was potentially going to grow. And how close that knit that group was, even that week, like I mentioned earlier, that I got to train there through the All-Australian under-17 squad, that you could see how close and how really connected that group was, and having the likes of Hamill and those sort of guys and Gehrig to show that toughness as well that they needed. I was really looking forward to, and I really wanted to get selected by St Kilda. So, it just made you even more hungry to be there, in a way.
So around that kind of time, we're seeing Xavier was having a couple of injury problems with the hamstring and other little bits and pieces, little niggles and that sort of stuff. Did you find that when you played with him out on the field, you would maybe lift a little bit more, or you'd feel like you could possibly play it a bit better, or did he have any kind of effect on you as a player and as a leader and leading the way you played your game? And how did the effect of having him there and not having him there go for you?
Yeah, definitely. When you look back at it, you probably at the time you didn't think like that, but you definitely felt the connection and whatnot, and you always were proud to run out with each other, and and mum and dad are sitting on the couch getting to watch both of us on TV, and the rest of the families back home in the territory and whatnot, and you definitely felt. Especially when you're driving to the footy together and, talking, what do you plan on today, or who you playing on, and that sort of stuff, definitely made it a lot easier and definitely lifted you, to, know that you had your brother running out beside you.
Looking at the transition that came after that, so 06, you played a handful of games, including another final, and then Grant Thomas departs, Ross Lyon comes in. Obviously, he's back at the club now, but what was that like for you, given you would end up settling across halfback in a defensive type role, particularly under Ross?
Yeah, I think the good thing with Ross, I think he just, he just set the rules and that straight away, and what he demanded and what wanted from you. I'm not saying Grant didn't, but Grant allowed us to have a bit of maybe more of that freedom, the way we played our football, and let us sort of play not any style, but take the game on a bit more. I suggest with Rossi, we all know, is that quite defensive mindset. When he came on board, and we looked really more structured and whatnot, and how we played our football. Not saying it took anything away from us, but we still, were quite successful. But yeah, it definitely was for me, it was, I had to get through the bloody another operation I had with his first season, and I got in trouble, I think, the very first session he was there, because I was meant to only allowed to walk laps because of the osteitis pubis operation I had in the off season, and not allowed to do anything. And because all the new coaches were out there and they were doing a handball drill, a stationary one, just with all the whole squad, and Anthony Rocker, not Rocker, but he's gone blank.
Yeah.
Yeah, he called me over to join him because he had no one to handball the ball with. So I jumped in and started handballing the ball with him and doing the same drills as everyone else, but still standing stationary. Then I could hear someone screaming out my name from the distance, and it was the two physios running over, screaming and yelling, "Get off! Get off!" Like, we told you just walk, and you weren't allowed to do anything. And I was like, "Oh, what? I can't even handball." And they're like, "No, you idiot! Get off!" And then Rossi, the next bloke standing next to me, and he was like, "Oh, look out! You better get off." So yeah, that was my sort of first introduction on the field with Rossi. Him seeing me getting yelled at by the physios.
What was that period of transition like for you as a young bloke? I mean, obviously you'd come up with Grant Thomas as your coach, and then after that losing final, it was a pretty kind of gloomy period, and then Grant gets sacked, and then the period of unknown, I guess. What was that period like for you as a young bloke?
Yeah, I think it was because you finally built that trust with your coach and your other teammates, and then you wasn't sure who was coming on board and whatnot. So that was a little bit of that grey areas. And then you're thinking you had to re-prove yourself to Grant and whatnot, not Grant, to Ross, sorry, and start all over again. But it was glad that he sort of obviously looked at us and knew how we played and whatnot. So, but then again, you still had to get that trust in him and whatnot, and what you could do and what you could deliver as well. So, yeah, it was sort of not a setback, but to have to go through it again, it wasn't probably ideal. After, like you said, we still had a very good squad there, and we didn't lose too much in that final. So yeah, it would have been, if Grant was another coach for another year, you never know what could have been the possibility straight away for another season. But yeah, it's that's the way it went in the end. So
2008, you got off to a little bit of a slow start. Played five of the first 8 rounds. Then we're off for injuries and bits and pieces, and that you go away for a little bit, you come back, and you almost feel like a different player at that point. It feels like almost something clicked, and the way you finished that season, I think all the fans were going, "Wow, this is unbelievable. Where has this come from?" Was there something you did in that period of time there that you sort of go, "Okay, this is where I'm going to focus on, and I'm going to try something different," or was it just a case of getting yourself right and getting back out there, and it just all happened?
Yeah, I think it was definitely a bit of that, and rethinking it all and getting it all sorted. But at the same time, we had a bit of bad news with the family, and the old man with his bowel cancer, and in that second half of the '08, he was down in Melbourne and doing his chemotherapy down there, and so having him down there, I think, gave me that extra bit of someone to like us here in the house that's might not be here for much longer to lift and get give everything I could and get even more out of myself. I believe, but at the time it probably didn't occur in my head like that. I just knew, oh, Dad's here, like you got to make sure you're playing your best footy, and he's probably not going to be able to watch you for much longer. And unfortunately enough, he did pass away at the end of '08 and whatnot. So he did get to see some of my best footy at St Kilda, and I'm glad I got to do that for him.
You played one of your best games in that '08 final series against Collingwood, 25 possessions, 13 marks, played well in the prelim where we got beaten by Hawthorn. Probably your other standout game was also a final, a preliminary final against the Western Bulldogs the following year in '09. It must be a good thing to know that I guess some of your best football and some of your best games were played in big finals.
Yeah, and it's something that everyone seems to keep saying to me, and why don't you do it all year round? And I don't know whether it's I'm not saying I found that everyone does find a little bit extra in them to go that a bit more harder or in a final, but I think it just went my way. I always made sure I was there for every contest I could be in any other regular game, but I think it's a penny of the bounced my way a bit more in those couple of finals, and I was able to deliver. So, but yeah, it was I can't explain why they were, but but yeah, I'm glad they were.
That '09 season, obviously you missed a bunch of footy at the start of that season as well. Kind of came back halfway through, and the team was was kind of humming at that point. I mean, what was the feeling around the footy club and the group, knowing, like, was it just a feeling that you kind of knew you were going to win each week, and what was that like?
I think we just knew with the previous seasons how close we were, being in those finals, and then having that same, pretty much almost the same squad with a couple of extra extra better players joined us and whatnot, like Farron Ray and those type of guys in those finals as well, and going, righto, we've got to, this is our moment, this is our chance, like if we don't, push us and go as hard as we can now, it doesn't last forever with those, keeping that talent and that squad together. Because that was probably what made us the feeling around the club, and everyone was always walking around with a smile, and there was, even if you had an injury, you're still in amongst all the fun and games and smiling with everyone, and it just you just didn't want to be anywhere else really. Like that was a feeling. And even on our lunches, we'd all go to the same cafes together and sit there, all 20 or 30 of us all sitting in a small little cafe in Hampton that they had a little back room they used to give to us there, that we had to ourselves. So it was like we were in each other's pockets all day, every day type thing. So
basically the bubble travelled from Moorabbin to everywhere. They described it as. So the two losses in the home and away season in 2009, how did Ross, I guess, handle that? So we're gone 19-0, and then we have the loss to North and Essendon, and then North. How did he go after those? Was it just sort of a bit like, okay, we've had them, let's get to the next round, or was there suddenly, did he focus on anything in particular because of the back-to-back loss and try to change anything, or just kept going how it was?
No, I think it's a hard one to off the top of your head, but I think he just pointed out the few areas, like definitely on the reviews, that areas that we normally would win that a certain contest or go lower and harder at the footy, and maybe we didn't expect them to come out, and we had those slow starts, and just assumed that because of the wins we had, that's what his message was. Like, you probably just thought we were gonna come back and win because they weren't in such good form, both of them, in that season. So he just thought, look, you can't expect anything just to come our way, and even if you are playing the bottom side in this competition, you got to be on your game every week, and that was probably the biggest message out of it. And it was probably good it happened then, because it gave us that wake up call coming into finals. That like can't take anyone lightly for even a quarter or even half a quarter, because they can kick a bloody couple of goal lead on you that you can't peg back.
What was, after those, and obviously we go into finals, first minor premiership for quite a while, top of the ladder, all those sorts of things. But off the back of two losses, how did the group kind of reset and focus, refocus their kind of aims and goals and targets for first week of finals and the run that was, that we were hoping for?
Yeah, like I mentioned about the Rossi stuff, it's a hard one to off the top of your head, but I think just knowing, and the group chats we had and whatnot, and even, running out before the games, and Rui at the time, the pre-game speeches saying, we know where we belong and what we can deliver, and that was more the message to say, look, let's show why we're here and prove why we went through the season and won the minor premiership, and this is our time to deliver something the club has been missing and still hasn't got for a long time. But that was mainly the message, because we knew we're going to possibly could do something for the club that they hadn't seen, like I just mentioned, for a very long time. I think that was the main key message, and everyone was like, yes, let's get it. Like, we're all on the same page. We're not leaving nothing unturned now to make sure we do get there to the end.
Two-part question on the grand final. So 2009, you play, Xavier's on the list, injured, ends up at Brisbane the following year. How difficult was it, I guess, to know that both of you would have dreamt of that? You're there, he can't be there. And then I guess the following year, you're on the list, but not in the grand final. So I guess you then experienced that side of the coin as well.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough one. Xavier had the ACL in 2009, and unfortunately didn't get to play many at all in '09 with him, and that was one, like you mentioned, our most successful season. Yeah, and that was definitely a tough one. Knowing when we came off and having your brothers, we're all standing there holding each other after the loss. But yeah, even harder when we walked into the rooms after especially the draw. At first, that was a hard one because you didn't know how to react or didn't know how to talk to anyone in regard to what's going to happen and what's happening next week. I think the biggest one that hit home after the drawn grand final, me and Xavier were walking out to the car because he flew down to come watch it with me from Brisbane, and we're walking out the car, and I heard my name get called out and turned around. It was Rossi had walked out just behind us, and so I walked over and gave him a handshake and a hug, and something that hit home, and still to this day is one of the something that I still look back and go, the way he said it, he said, "Oh, look, I definitely needed you out there today. We would have been in a different situation," and and saying that I possibly could have been the one that maybe got us over the line. That was something that I'd hold very, very cherished, very, very close to my heart forever. Hearing that from Rossi after that drawn grand final.
You mentioned running out with Nick Rewalt and the pre-game speeches and those sorts of things. What was it like playing with Rui? And give us a bit of insight into what he was like as a leader. I guess A, to you personally, but B, to the group as a whole.
I think the best thing about Rui, the way he spoke, is because he knew he was going to give you everything he had as well. So it wasn't one of those chats where he'd be humming and ahhing and jumping up and down, and then he goes out and then he's expecting everyone else to deliver. That's why he was our captain. He was the one who pretty much worked harder than anyone on the football field. And, when you seen him, the contests he made and the efforts he made, it just made you want to live for him in the way he spoke to us, and, wanting to get the best out of all of us, definitely made you want to run out every game, but by his side, that's for sure.
Getting to the end of 2011 with Rossi leaving and that, how did you see all that happening? We had the final, we lose the final, a couple of players are announced that they're retiring. Not long after, Ross is going to Fremantle. How did you see all this happening, and what was your view of it all?
Yeah, it was definitely. I was one of the ones that would have been. There's a few of us who were shocked and didn't know or see any of it happening or coming and whatnot. But yeah, then because with the injuries in 2011 and then 2010, missing out a lot of footy, I thought it was a way of me, being able to start fresh. That was the only positive I seen for myself. I didn't really see too much of a positive for the club and where we had gotten to as Ross, because of what we built and where we were heading, and the finals we got to play in with him. Yeah, it definitely was shattering when he did leave. Because we had that really strong relationship in the way we played in our football, but the other thing was maybe this is a chance for me to bloody get back in with the new coach, whoever comes on board, and I might find a spot back in the side if I get myself out of this injury situation and whatnot. So, but yeah, then again, it went the other way.
On that, obviously, it was at 9 years in the system, 85 games, came to an end at the end of 2012. St Kilda had entered a difficult period. A final one from me. What's life entailed since then in terms of what you've been up to and just your general day to day?
Yeah, well, I'm still running around. Just we're in our footy season's coming to an end this weekend. We are playing in the third division with men's side for St Mary's. Like I mentioned, my club before, and I think everyone knows. All the St Kilda supporters know St Mary's is our club, me and Xavier. And the funny thing is the senior men and women are both playing in the grand final this weekend. So that'll be good for the footy club. We got knocked out in the first final, and still limping around in the back line there for our Div 1 men. But yeah, I got to finish my carpentry after I was delisted from St Kilda down in Melbourne, and now I've got my own little project management business running up here in Darwin. It's been running for about 4 years. Wurba's the name. WURRBA is how it's spelt. So if anyone's interested to see how my little business is going, we've got our own little website and whatnot. We do a lot of the works on the defence bases up here. A lot of new builds and renovations to all the older buildings up here. So I'm still in the building industry and that side of things. So got myself a little 10-man team in my business. So going along not too bad and staying busy. And another positive or news for the any fans that are listening, I'm finally having my first child, which is due the first week of April. It's taking me a bit longer than the rest of them, but I was busy running around doing the work and trying to sort all this work stuff out and whatnot as well. So fingers crossed. So we haven't decided on finding out the sex. So it's all going to be a surprise in the coming weeks. But every night, the way it's jumping around inside the missus's belly, it feels like it's going to pop out at any minute. So,
congratulations! I think we've got five or six between
soon six.
Soon six. You've got another one coming. But mate, just going back to the end of your career, I'd be remiss to ask you about how it all ended. Obviously, Scott Waters came in for that final season. You missed a bunch of footy again. I think you only played 3 games for that season. And then the story goes that you got a text message saying it was all over. I mean, how did that all come to be?
Yeah, and that was probably the frustrating thing. And that's what made me lose a lot of my respect for Scott after that had happened. And the thing was he never actually, when he was coaching us, I didn't really hear much feedback from him and what I needed to work on or what did he need from me and whatnot. And I'd always have to go see the backline coach at the time, which was Denny
Sexton.
Dave Sexton?
Yeah, Denny Sexton. So Denny would be like, "Oh, come to my office after the main training session after the selection was taking place and there'd never be any feedback from buddy Scotty at the time to say, it all came from Danny. So that's one thing. Another one I didn't really understand or couldn't work out. And then to be up home on holidays back here in Darwin and then all of a sudden, my manager, he said, "Oh, look, St Kilda are going to list you, just giving you the heads up." And I said, "Oh, no worries, I'll wait for the phone call." Then, like you mentioned, a text message popped through and I was like, wow, like after 9 years of, giving him everything I could possibly and, the battered up body I've got now, you expected a bit more than that. So that's for sure. That's probably, the only thing that, when people still ask me if do I barrack for St Kilda, there's still a little soft spot there, but I probably, the love I had from before I got there and when I was there is not as much as I've got from now, just the way it all ended, unfortunately.
Now, something recent that was probably quite close to your heart, we've had in the preseason the Indigenous All-Stars versus Fremantle. I can't remember if you played in one previously years back.
Yes.
You did, yes, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think it was you played with Carlton or someone back then. I think, wasn't it? Yeah. Something that you reckon this could possibly be something we see every year. It was received really well, and it was a great spectacle. The skill level is amazing to watch, and to get that sort of group together every year would be probably a great intro into the season. You can probably have that as well as possibly a state of origin between 2 states.
Yeah,
but how's that you thinking that, okay, that's what we need? It's a really good thing to have it in the Northern Territory too, would be great for the locals, great encouragement for all basically the sport.
Yeah.
Do you think it could possibly, I was of the thought that maybe they could bring some locals into it, like from St Mary, say, or that. Is there a couple of players that you think could probably step up to that level?
The guys that you think that were next to be in line to draft, that it definitely would be definitely an awesome ticket for anyone that's in that 17 to 18-year-old category getting ready to be drafted and in the previous season. And like I said, I was quite lucky when it came to Darwin that one of the boys that flew up to play in it, I think he hurt his hamstring the morning before he boarded in his last training session, and that's how the spot opened up for me. And I was quite lucky that I I was one of the younger ones in the senior comp that was standing out at the time, and yeah, it happened to be me they picked. So I was very, very lucky. So then I get my first opponent that scared the living life out of me when I ran on. I ran up and there's Anthony Koutafidis, and here I am at 17 weighing 55 kilos or 60 kilos, and Anthony Koutafidis picked me up.
I knew I wasn't imagining that. I knew you'd played right at the start of the journey there, somewhere along the way, and then again, obviously, later on. But, Raph, thanks very much for joining us. It's great to reminisce, and we love sharing these stories with players all across the journey. So, wishing you well, and good luck with all the sides for the GF.
No worries, and awesome. And if anyone's out there and looking for a bit of footy to watch before the St Kilda game this weekend, I'm pretty sure on the live stream apps up here in the Territory that you can join in and watch the St Mary's men and women go for a couple of premierships on Saturday. So if you're bored and looking for something to do, come and watch our mighty green and gold online.
Got a couple of mates who never missed that comp. Raph, thank you.
No worries. Thanks for having me, guys.